G'day everyone, this is Hunter here. So on this video I'm going to show you how to fit a diff breather on a 2014 D40 Navara. This is the factory fitting on the rear diff. In my latest video, if you've watched it, I explained an issue that I ran into where I snapped the bloody brass fitting or brass thread on this onboard air diff breather kit, and I explained how I fixed all that issue. Well, I didn't fix it, but I ended up having pay work to do it. But anyway, I digress. So what you have to know about this thread, it is a tapered threading on the rear diff, and this is the one that you should really replace. It will cause your axle seal to break, and you end up having to replace it. It ends up becoming pretty costly in the end. So I'll explain what the kit comes in. It comes with these push fitting brass fittings. It comes with hose, which in my opinion they do not give you enough to do the car, and I'll explain why in a bit. And it also comes with an allium block with some filters. It comes with these little tiny useless zip ties in my opinion, and I'll explain through in a shortly, and I'll show you the housing itself. So this is the housing here. These are your breathers here with the filters on them, and it also comes with two 90-degree fittings here, which I have one there and one at the back, which this line here is the rear diff, and I've also got a line for the front diff. Now I haven't fully finished yet. I've installed the front diff and the rear diff, which honestly the rear diff is the most important, but the front diff I just did because, well, it's here in the engine bay. Now, other people, they will heat up this tube and then push on the fittings for the front differential and transfer case fittings for the breather pipes on the actual housing itself on those three components. In all honesty, you can do that and there is no problem with doing that whatsoever. I didn't do it for the main factor that whenever a mechanic or yourself ends up having to remove these parts for whatever reason, having these heated up and sealed on those fittings would actually be a pain in the ass to get off, and then you end up having to get new lines and etc. So what I did for ease is I just basically pushed this hose inside the factory hose. Now this is the front diff here, and I don't know if you can see it, but basically if you look down, it goes straight down to the top of the front diff. Now the front diff on these are hard mounted, they don't go up and down like the rear diff do, so these generally don't move. So I just did that for ease of use, so it goes straight up there and then plugs in there nice and neat, and hit the cord so it's all nice and clean. Now for the rear diff, what I've done is I've got a conduit that I ran for the canopy's lighting. And the canopy's lighting is this wire here, and that will go all the way down there through this conduit, which goes right down in there and then runs along the side of the body. So I've got the breather coming out of the conduit from here, and although a lot of people don't like these rubbing on sharp surfaces because they will eventually wear down, but this doesn't move, so it won't really rattle that much. And then it runs all the way up there, and then it feeds into the diff breather on that side there, on a 90-degree elbow, which is facing the side of the firewall. And the diff breather comes all the way down here through this channel, following the conduit, which this is a conduit with my canopy stuff, which is going to also feed the dual battery system in the future. And it's going to go all the way down into there until it goes to the rear diff, which is, if you can see, it's a little hard to see it, but basically if you see that pipe that runs there, you can see it there, it comes all the way down to there. And I've given myself plenty of slack as well, so then that way when the diff comes up and down, it's never on full tension. So that's where the rear diff goes. So it goes from there all the way along there, all out the channel, up through the conduit, up through that conduit there. As you can see, it goes in, which allowed me to get up all the way up there without too many difficulties. The reason why I feed it through the conduit up there is, one, to avoid loose wires and stuff like that from coming out, and it keeps it a little bit neat, because I didn't want this actually inside the conduit all the way through, because it would cause me problems when I fit my wires for my dual battery setup. And then that is the rear and the front diff. Now I'll explain the transfer and the gearbox and why I haven't done it yet. Okay, so this is the back of the transfer case here. That there's the breather outlet, which is a metal barb, just like any push fittings or anything like that with, well, not push fittings, but like, you know, on your fuel pumps and stuff like that. So this here, you can sort of see, that is the breather for the transfer case. And that line goes up the top of the case, goes up there to the connector over there. You can see that little clip sort of out of focus right now. And it will join up with the gearbox. And it will join up with the gearbox to about there. See those two little funky lines up there? That's where the breathers are for both of them. And the gearbox breather is that it's the same type of fitting, but it's 90 degree instead of straight up on the transfer. But you can, behind that plastic conduit, you can see the rubber hose, and it comes out, and then it comes up and joins that other hose up the top there. They're both the breather lines, and they kind of do this weird thing where they like join onto like metal and rubber fittings, and they basically go on top of the gearbox, and then go up the bell housing, and then they join to one line up here somewhere. And this is the reason why I haven't fitted them. They're already at a pretty high point already on the factory fittings, so you don't necessarily have to worry too much about doing them, but in saying so, a lot of people, what they do is they actually get up in here and they will again heat up the hose and then push the hoses on. And I'm not going to do that, because one day, and it will be one day, the clutch will need to be doing on my car, which means that that hose, if I was to do it that way, again, would be a pain in the ass to get off, to then have to drop the gearbox down, and it would just be a lot of stuffing around to do. So this is the reason why I'm going to opt out. And the hoses are quite adequate at lasting the life of the car, because they don't have any oil or anything particularly going through them. It's just the air, so they will last the whole time, and they're out of sunlight, and so that you don't really need to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find where they join, and they join up one hose, and they will be exactly something like that. They'll just sort of sit somewhere, and I'll put the hose inside it like that. I don't necessarily need a clamp, that's pretty tight, and then I'll feed it to Diff breather. I will have one spare port, but that's okay. So on this particular model, they have 3 breathers. You've got the electronic actuator, you've got the transfer, and you've got the gearbox. Now all those 3 components end up turning into one factory breather, which is up here somewhere. It's located near the brake booster somewhere, but I haven't quite found it yet. So when I find it, I'll then just plug the hose in there and then just feed it along, but I haven't found it yet, so, but eventually I'll find it. But I thought I'd make this little video on how to fit a diff breather, because there's a lot of different videos out there and they're all kind of all over the place. So I just thought I'll just have my little video and explain it all. So I hope this helps. It's a little bit confusing, but this is how I'm going to do it. Pretty much the only thing I'm fitting a fitting to it is the rear diff, which has got a push fitting. Everything else I'm just going to use the factory hoses and push the hoses provided by onboard air, and then run it through to the breather there. I don't recommend that this company makes great products. The fact they use brass instead of stainless kind of really annoys me. They snap easily. I learned that the hard way. If you look at my old video, that's not necessarily their fault though. It is user error, but it's just, I think brass isn't really best suited to the application that it's intended for. Great for water and other sort of applications, but definitely not automotive in this sense. But I hope you're having a good day and night depending where in the world, and I'll catch you next time.